Hi there, this is Pride Weekly. We'll start with Monday. If you're up for the crack this summer, I know I am, details about this year's Dublin Pride have been announced. It's the 50th anniversary event with the theme of shine. The idea is you can shine in your own pride or be a light for others who are in the dark right now. Dublin's first gay rights demonstration was back in 1974 and Senator David Norris was there. He tells Virgin Media Television it didn't quite attract the 60 to 80,000 people you get at Pride there these days.
There were about 8 or 9 of us. We wanted to have the laws changed because it was a considerable insult. I mean, it's not very nice to be defined into criminality for something that you have as little responsibility for as the colour of your hair.
Dublin Pride runs from June the 20th to the 29th. It's come out the Beastie Boys quietly paid for the woman who first signed them to have gender-affirming surgery. The American band pretended they owed the money to Donnelly Parsons in royalties because they knew she wouldn't take it otherwise. She came out as trans in 2002 after hearing the term for the first time. Donna was diagnosed with colon cancer not long after, then had gender-affirming surgery and died in 2003, having finally got the body she'd always wanted. And the United Nations has voted to protect the rights of intersex people. At least 1.7% of babies are born with sex characteristics that don't fit with the typical medical definitions of male or female. The UN's Human Rights Council is going to work to fight discrimination, violence and harmful practices and to help intersex people have the best physical and mental health. It's Pride Daily for Tuesday. Is this the mark of a man with too much time in his hands? Your friend and mine, Elon Musk, the musketeer, the mosquito, he's decided to sue an entire country. It's Australia in its crosshairs after the government there forced his anti-social media site Twitter, nobody calls it X, to remove a post deemed harmful to a trans person. This was written by someone who says he travels the world to expose gender ideology, guessing this is in lieu of a proper job. Musk says it's getting legal because he's fighting for the user's free speech. Waleed Ali from The Project on Australia's Network 10 isn't convinced.
I don't get how Elon Musk plans to sue. There's no free speech law in Australia that would allow that, unless he thinks it's a technical argument. But I'd be surprised if he does sue. And we know that his spokesperson said they haven't received anything that would amount to a formal legal approach or anything like that. So I don't know if it'll happen.
There's a push in the Philippines to recognise the rights of same-sex couples who've got property together. Currently, the country just doesn't, so some legislation's been filed with Parliament to try and address this. It would only offer a very limited set of property rights for LGBTQ+ partners, including treating them fairly if they split up. And Wales is to host the 2027 Euro Games. The biggest annual LGBTQ+ multi-sports event in Europe is heading to the capital Cardiff. Makes it the first time it'll be in the UK. The Games were launched back in 1992 as a way of encouraging integration in sport and fighting discrimination. It's Pride Daily for Wednesday. A trans woman in Australia is suing a social media site for women after she was kicked off it. Giggle for Girls asked users for a selfie so artificial intelligence could determine their gender. Roxanne Tickle's photo was categorised as female and she was on the app for a few months, but then the AI decision was manually overridden. She's taken the case to Australia's federal court, claiming unlawful discrimination on the basis of gender identity. Outside the court, 10 News First heard from supporters on both sides.
This is a small group of people who are trying to take away our rights as transgender people.
Women have single-sex spaces for a reason. They don't need them all the time, but they need to know they're there.
Giggle for Girls CEO says it didn't break sex discrimination laws. The app very sadly shut down in August 2002. Rather than focus on dodgy priests, the Vatican's going after trans people, says gender-affirming surgery is a violation of human dignity, and so is what the dodgy priests get up to. This is coming from a 20-page Vatican declaration that's been approved by the Pope, covers what it calls a range of threats, including abortion and assisted dying. The document's been criticised as archaic and uninclusive of all God's children. And an outdoor activities club for LGBTQ+ people is turning 50, as am I in about 3.5 years. Botox incoming. The Gay Outdoor Club was set up back in 1974, and it's become the oldest and biggest of its kind in the UK. Had just 5 members to start with. That's grown now to around 1,800. It's Pride Daily for Thursday. A review into gender identity services for young people in England has found children are being let down. The CAST report says there's a lack of research and evidence when it comes to medical interventions, and it's made a point of calling for extreme caution to be used when prescribing puberty blockers to kids. Dr. Hilary Cass is behind the review. She tells the BBC she's uneasy about this medication.
We don't know the long-term impact on brain development because there's a rapid period of brain development in adolescence, and we also don't know if it changes the trajectory of somebody's gender and psychosexual development.
The report was commissioned 4 years ago after a big rise in referrals to England's health service of young people questioning their gender. 2 US servicemen who weren't promoted because they were HIV positive have won a lawsuit. The pair were in the Navy and the Air Force and took action against the Department of Defence in 2018. Their settlements mean they'll finally be confirmed by the government as officers. New rules came in a couple of years back, so people with no symptoms and an undetectable viral load won't face restrictions. And a gay Jewish kangaroo has been awarded the Federal Cross of Merit by Germany. Barry Kosky is an Australian theatre director who used to be the head of an opera company in Berlin. He once described himself to a journalist as a gay Jewish kangaroo, just to be flippant, and it stuck. The cross is awarded for special achievements in various fields, including culture. It's Pride Daily for Friday. There's some concern off the back of that review into gender identity services for young people in England. Have a listen back to yesterday, the bit on the CAS report, if you're not up to speed. This is being criticised for how its recommendations have been reached, with claims it was selective in the evidence it relied on. Advocates reckon access to healthcare for trans young people will be made harder, and fear all this is just going to feed into the culture wars. Laura Stoner's chief exec of Mermaids, the transgender support charity, she tells Sky News there are a number of concerns.
Some of those are about the way that things are framed very ambiguously and the fact that they are very open to misinterpretation, particularly around areas such as social transition, access to gender-affirming hormones and puberty blockers. So there are a number of areas where the implementation will be key. England's
Health Service says it'll carefully consider the report's recommendations before it sets out what it's actually going to do. It's the annual Day of Silence in the US, raising awareness about the effects of bullying and harassment on LGBTQ+ students. Maria Paulzette came up with the idea back in 1996. She was a uni student at the time and felt queer young people were silenced and ignored by parents and teaching staff. People taking part stay silent through the day while they're in classes. And I am an absolute ruddy sucker for anything Heartstopper related, so let me tell you, Bradley Riches, who plays James, has gotten engaged. There's a picture on Instagram of the actor and his boyfriend, Scott Johnston, standing inside a big heart made of rose petals. Scott popped the question on holiday somewhere. Bradley says his new fiancée makes him feel safe, accepted and loved. I'm actually getting married to my boyfriend soon, unless Nick Jonas finally comes to his senses. I'm Kev McGrath. See you Monday.